Good evening and welcome once again to Governance Leadership Summit presented by Elets Technomedia and e-Governance magazine. Governance Leadership Summit is a 2 days virtual conference wherein we have tried to bring topmost policymakers, officers, government officers, and experts from the industry to deliberate upon the issues and challenges facing the governance, particularly against the backdrop of the COVID pandemic. This 2 days virtual conference started today in the morning. In the inaugural session, we are joined by some eminent speakers from the government of India. And throughout the course of the day, we had eminent speakers from various state governments, as well as representation from the industry as well, who discussed and deliberated upon the challenges faced during the COVID times and how were they able to leverage technology to overcome those challenges and what is the way forward from here. So moving on to the final panel discussion, we have a very special guest with us today, Mr. Samir Unhale. Mr. Samir Unhale is a Joint Commissioner, Directorate of Municipal Administration, Government of Maharashtra. And the discussion of the panel is on urban development and future cities towards building back a better post-COVID-19 India. So it's a very relevant topic in the context of the COVID pandemic. The COVID pandemic has impacted not only the humanity in India, but throughout the globe. Every sector, every sphere of the economy, every sphere of the life has been impacted by the sector. And urbanization or urban development or urban sector is not any exception. There are challenges in the current context, and there is a way forward going from here as well. So without taking much of time, I would request Mr. Samir Unhale to give his opening remarks. In the meanwhile, we'll be joined by other speakers also in due course of time. So over to you, Mr. Samir Unhale, Joint Commissioner.
Thank you very much, Mishraji. It is always delight to be a part of deliberations by Elets, because as far as I recollect, it has been one of the premier house which is trying to create a dialogue on very important and pertinent topics, which including this smart cities and municipal bodies, and this general response of cities as an institution towards the challenges that we are facing. And I would really be, I think this third decade of the third millennia, as we call this, is extremely crucial. I think whenever the history of this century will be written, I think this decade is going to be the make or break decade that we would be having. Whether it is be any challenge that we are facing right now, we are in the midst of the COVID pandemic. And the way cities are responding to this COVID pandemic, I think we have a lot of lessons to learn. We had the first two waves, and now probably some experts are indicating that we might also have to be prepared for the third wave. And further, of course, after this COVID, we will be having the challenges of resetting the economy again of the city also, because city also has a lot of economic activity. And that city economy has to again brought into the place. Then we always have challenges of climate action, which will be very important in this decade, because some people do say that one of the reason of this recurrent pandemics that we are having can be associated to the issues of climate change and the general destructions of the jungles and forests we are seeing. There is an indication, some of research indicating that the recurrent epidemics could be attributed to climate change as well. And again, of course, most importantly, all of us have agreed to the Sustainable Development Goals, the Paris Accord, which indicates, which we are as a country, we are a signatory to that. And I think the population of urban population in India, in absolute sense, it I think is huge. In fact, although in matter of percentage of the 2011 census, it's around 31-32%. And if we consider now in 2021 and the increase in that, and again the absolute sense, the population, urban population staying in cities of India, I think will be more than almost 35 to 40 crores. And let me tell you, that will be the second largest country in the world. I mean, third largest country in the world. I mean, after China and India. I think the third country in population is United States of America, which population around 33 crores. So I'm just trying to share the importance and significance of India's urban system. We have, as per the last count, we had around 8,000 odd census towns, which are the urban habitats. More than 4,000 of them were statutory towns, which were in fact municipalities. And this entire India's urban system is so, geographically it is very varied, it's differentiated. It has, various cities and towns in different stages of evolution and development, economically, technologically, institutionally. And therefore it is extremely important, the way we engage with India's urban system. And when we try to study the response of India's urban system to these various challenges, I think it gives a very important and very interesting set of criteria and parameters that we will have to study and be prepared for, especially the four challenges which I shared with you, that we will have to more importantly dwell on this in this decade. That is managing the current COVID pandemic, looking for urban recovery of the economy, looking for the credible climate actions, and of course attaining the sustainable development goals that all of we have. So and cities are going to be the extremely important actors into this entire activity of the four challenges that I shared with you. Before moving ahead, I would like to just share a bit of try to put these things in a bit of perspective, because when we talk of India is always remembered as the city of villages, which of course it is, still it is going to be. We have around 600,000, more than 600,000 villages in the country. So obviously that the importance of our rural habitat is definitely important. But we'll have to remember that the what we were in traditional sense, if we look at the modern way of handling the Indian cities or administering cities, I think that reference would go to that of the municipalities. The formation of municipalities can be taken as one of the watershed for way of managing Indian cities right from the East India Company's duration. In fact, I remember that the first act of Pan India Act, the first Pan India Act was of 1850. That's 170 years back. Which was passed by the then the Lord. I think I don't recollect the name, but I think the doctrine of lapse was just introduced, and it was mentioned by some of the historians that probably the ushering of local bodies then had to do to break this the impact of various annexations which went on 1848 onwards. And this is Act of 1850, which was enacted on 1st January of 1850. Only the then British provinces, and you find many, the municipalities started coming up in the area which was under the British domain. So you had in Maharashtra, in fact, then then Bombay presidency of we have municipalities coming in 1850 itself. The act was passed in January, and you had started making municipalities in month of July and August of 1850 itself. The process had started. So that could be taken as one of the watersheds or beginning of the modern way of handling the Indian cities. We know that even in the Kautilya's Arthashastra, we had officers called as Nagrik. The Nagrik was actually a name of an officer. It's a designation. Those officers which handled the Indian cities way back in the time of 2,500 years back, when the days of Kautilya. So managing cities is nothing new in India, despite its predominantly rural image that we have. But I think 1850 we can take as a watershed of a modern way of handling. Then we move to, I think after 1880s and 1890s, many had started founding the development trust, in the improvement trust actually. So what we had was that in the a lot of planning institutions started coming up. In Bombay presidency, I recollect it was in 1913 that the Act of Planning was made. Planning and Town Planning Act was made in 1913 in then Bombay province. And so we started having apart. But then with municipalities, you also had a planning, land use planning coming up, and then you had parastatals which were there. Like electricity, we had an example of Bombay municipality, having electric supply then, and that was also on a very new thing that we had. You can recollect, when the municipality was trying to come up with the electricity supply, Then there were also parastatals, there were private sectors. So we will have to remember that when we try to take Indian cities and place them in a perspective. We have a long, history and tradition of that. The modern way of functioning was essentially the British way of administering the cities. When it got, mixed also with our freedom movement and national movement, gave a different flavor to the way Indian municipalities, grew up, and the way they are handling. So when we are trying to look at what we are going to do in 2020, the past history of the way we are coming up with our managing our Indian cities and towns will also help us, to project what could be happening in the next 10 or 20 years that really we are talking to come up. Yeah. So, Mr. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Samir Unale, for that insightful talk. Being a leading expert on urban policy, sanitation, and urban transportation, you also had recently published a book. If I may request my backend team to show the cover of that book, How Will India Fix Our Urban Future? This book you had mentioned urban policies like Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation, Amrut. You also mentioned about Hriday, how they would be laying the future pathways for urban India. So we would be liking to know more about these two initiatives and how effective would these policies be, and how states can make the most of these policies for local development. But before that, may I request my backend team to show the cover of that book, which Mr. Samir Unale has authored. How will India fix our urban future?
Yeah, so actually, thank you for that. Actually, this was co-authored with my with Dr. Binti Singh, who is IIT from PhD from IIT Bombay, and also working in one of the urban sector. So actually, the idea was that there is one approach of taking overarching framework. It's an overarching broad framework in which we try to deal with the entire topic. And another way of handling a sector is try to understand and study the small stories which are happening, which essentially need not be a part of an overarching theoretical framework onto which you can study a factor. So essentially, this was a illustrations taken from the various experience that we had, and then try to really understand the significance of those stories into the broader framework that we were talking of. So as I was indicating that when we are trying to study the municipal bodies or the cities of 2020 or the third decade, there is a historical tradition that is building up. So if we want to consider that, so maybe if you look 30 years back, that was in 1993-94, we were talking of the 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment there. So these were the major, I think, another milestone by which we tried to shift to recognizing the local cities as a credible form of within our constitutional framework. So I think that was a very important landmark there. And then, of course, you see a various point of strengthening the cities also. We see various approaches, various missions, various measures which were taken that started supporting and identifying, acknowledging the significance of Indian cities into the the role of national development. In fact, so in this framework, you will find that maybe in the first decade here we had the GNURM, which came up as a first major central government initiative, because as you know, the urban issues are essentially a state list into our constitution, the 7th schedule. It's in the state list. So it was the first effort which was made to bring in major central government initiative, funding, and the monitoring of wages under the GNURM and the BSUP projects. The similar approach you find in the 2015-14 onwards. The Swachh Bharat was a major mission, a major activity which was taken by which the very fundamental question of cleanliness, of health, of environment, of the cities were getting tackled by the mission like Swachh Bharat. And essentially, Swachh Bharat was meant for all the 4,000 cities and towns of the country. And again, various missions that were brought in. As we remember, in government, there is a possibility of a lot of bureaucratic red tapeism. There is a lot of delays. There is a lot of dissemination of purpose and communication along the chain of command. I mean, what one might think in a national capital or a state capital, and what actually happens by the concerned clerk or the officer in a smallest possible municipality of a country. There is a lot of, as one might say, the gradients of governance, as it is sometimes called, into the in the discipline of public administration. The farther administrative unit is from the state capital, the lesser might be the impact that it might be giving. So, considering all these aspects, was an important part under the mission approach that was taken. Also for Amrut, for Swachh Bharat, for Hriday, for even the smart city mission, was that it was taken in a mission approach, and the main crux of mission is time. The only important parameter is always the time, and we have to get things done in the least possible time, and that becomes the primacy and priority. And that's the reason why you find that the performance of the cities in maybe as compared to the earlier phase, performance of cities was much better this time. And let me tell you that the energy and synergy all these missions generated, the enthusiasm it generated among the political leadership, among the administrative leadership, the citizens, the media, the social activists, by all these missions, I think did energize the municipal bodies to an extent which is also being felt into the measures it took to respond to COVID. Because there's a possibility of inertia and lethargy and red tapeism in the such, but I feel I would attribute the agility and the adaptability and the speed with which the municipal bodies are responding even now, despite the challenges they are facing.
Yeah, true.
I think
In fact,
can be attributed to the various missions that were implemented. Yeah. So that I think is an important part, and even this. So what is important is the when you talk of administration or governance, it is a group of people which are expected to achieve a certain purpose given a set of resources. So that is what ultimately, in the very abstract, or when you have tried to take a bird's eye view, that is what you get. It's a group of people which has a sense of purpose, with a limited set of resources. They have to attain a particular result and deliver a particular impact. So that if when you look at Indian cities in this possible framework, you realize that even in this COVID days, municipal bodies, given their limited whatever resources they have tried to deliver and perform, putting their own taking personal risk. Many officers, many doctors, many Safai Karmis. Even during the lockdown, the Indian cities, the city was the city system was operational. You were getting water, you were getting electricity, the health people were working, the vaccination drives were going on, the isolation, tracking, tracing, those activities were going on. So we'll find that, this of course we still are in the midst of this. Then we have to learn from our mistakes to improve more what we are doing. But you will realize that when you talk of Indian cities or Indian towns as a system, you realize that they have performed in this very trying times. And let me tell you, even there are a lot of, some deaths have happened, even in if you talk of the doctors and Safai Karmis and even the municipal officers and staff have also contracted COVID. Unfortunately, some of them have died. Of course, there has been a system has been set up to take care and give them financial compensation, take care of the family. But yet, I'm just trying to share the significance of Indian cities and Indian municipal systems, in these trying times. And it was in this context you'll realize that the missions like Swachh Bharat, like Amrut, like Hriday, like smart cities energized and galvanized and created a synergy and set of dynamism into these systems, which I think may not have happened maybe a decade back. So that I think is a contribution. And then that particular context, we tried to put this point across to our viewers and readers. Yeah.
You are right, sir. In fact, you are absolutely right that during the lockdown, although the cities were closed, but the city administration and the city system was not closed. We were still getting the power supply, we were still getting the energy supply, we were still getting the water supply, and so on and so forth. So hats off to all those frontline workers and officials of the municipal administration who were instrumental in keeping the show going on. So meanwhile, I have been joined here by Mr. Rajkumar Beniwal. Mr. Rajkumar Beniwal he is the Commissioner for Municipalities, and he's also the Managing Director for Gujarat Urban Development Company. And he is additional CEO, Gujarat Urban Development Mission, Government of Gujarat. Welcome to the program, Mr. Rajkumar Beniwal. We are having a discussion on urban development and future of cities towards building back a better post-COVID-19 India. So we are joined by Mr. Samir Unhale. Mr. Unhale was giving a very interesting talk on the topic. So Mr. Unhale, you mentioned that India is having 8,000 urban habitats and 600,000 villages. Now, it's a curious paradox. If I talk of a transformational India, if I talk of a new India, whenever the countries progress, and with the progress and the development, the need of urbanization also arises. In fact, you quoted the example of United States with far lesser population. It is one of the most urbanized countries in the world. So as we move on to the transformational trajectory and move on for more urbanization, there is a migration from rural to urban. So, and because of which the urban cities and municipalities in these days are unable to cope up with the huge pressure of population, which is putting huge pressure on the resources, whether it is transport resource or whether it is water resource or whether it is managing the sanitation in the municipalities. So do you think that somewhere a middle path can be adopted? We can have more satellite cities, as you rightly mentioned, that these cities are different stages of evolution. So if we can have more development of comprehensive satellite cities, wherein the migration to the larger cities can be cut it. Mr. Unhale?
I think, this the study of migration, internal migration in India has been done a lot in various academic institutions. Like there is a issue of the push factor and the pull factor of migrations. There is you will have to understand that we were 35 crores total population in say 1950. I mean, around 35 crores. That's what the figures indicate. And now we are 135 crores. So where will be the additional, additional almost 100 crores people will be occupied? Where will the employment come to them? It can't come from the land is not going to increase. So obviously you can't have people, working only in the agriculture sector of the additional 100 crore population that we had in last, 70 years. It's not going to sit in agricultural work. They have to move out to somewhere else. So obviously, I think the Indian cities have done a very important and stellar role in absorbing the employability of the additional population explosion that we had in the last century, and without creating any measure. I mean, they have been stressed. Obviously, we cannot say there was not stress, but by and large, Indian cities have taken this responsibility of absorbing the increased Indian population, and that's the reason you find internal migration as an important contributing factor to the rise of the sizes of Indian cities, which in fact like a city like Delhi, there is the urban system. I would use the word urban system of say Delhi or maybe Mumbai. It's bigger than maybe 100 countries of the world. I mean, if you look at the population of, say, NCR, it might be around 3 crores approximately. It is more than maybe 150 countries of the world, the population. So we are trying to, so in that way, I think the migration has created definitely it has created a burden, but also it has been the important element and aspect of the economy of the Indian cities also. So that's the reason we find that we will have to, come up with certain solution of focusing on the infrastructure, especially for the poor. And because the rural poverty converts itself into urban poverty. And therefore, when you start tackling urban poverty, you automatically tackle many issues along with that. So along with that's the reason we have this Deen Dayal Upadhyay National Urban Livelihood Mission, which is right now also going on in most of the bigger municipalities of the country. And this day annual mission, amongst its various is also amongst its various various facets, it's also addressing this issue of urban poverty and thereby also taking help to an extent to the migration that has happened. So I think the Indian urban system is extremely complex, interconnected, and therefore, you cannot have one-to-one correspondence of a solution and an issue. There is, so much of interconnection happening that maybe one solution, maybe even one set of issue is connected with maybe 5 to 10 causal factors in their limited weighted averages. And so would be the impact of a particular action. Also would be into, it's a many, one-to-many and many-to-one correspondence of, causal factors and impacts is something that you would be seeing in Indian cities. And therefore, it's extremely interconnectedness that you find with the various factors and actors in urban system is something that is that's what really make it fascinating to work in the urban sector of India. So thank you, Mishra.
Right, sir. Right. Say the one size fits all may not suit here, so a customized solution would possibly be the need of the hour.
Yeah.
So may I now request Mr. Rajkumar Beniwal to kindly come on the screen. Mr. Rajkumar Beniwal, are you still there?
Yeah, Mr. Krishna.
Namaskar, sir.
Namaskar.
So Mr. Rajkumar Beniwal is a senior IS officer of 2004 batch. Currently, as I mentioned earlier, he is serving as Commissioner for Municipalities in the government of Gujarat, and he also holds the position of additional CEO, Gujarat Urban Development Mission. So Mr. Beniwal, we are discussing the challenges in the municipal administration in the times of COVID and the future of cities in the post-COVID era. Your views on it, sir.
Yeah, so good evening, everyone. I think the topic which we were just discussing, that the urban population is increasing. If I talk about Gujarat, Gujarat is one of the most urbanized state. Almost 45% of the population lives in urban areas. Now, in such pandemic situation, when the resources are very limited and the population is so high, and that is, so much clustered in one location, one particular location, in a way it has positive effects also and negative effects also. Positive in a way that you have one place where you have to manage the entire resources and the logistics for supporting the people in terms of pandemics. But at the same time, it also affects in a way that the spread of the disease or spread of the pandemic is very high. To control that, it becomes very difficult. So we were facing these kind of challenges during this recent pandemic, where during the second wave, particularly when the rise was very fast, and the resources mobilization was required to be at war footing level to reach to the people, to the demand of the people. So both urbanization gave us both advantages as well as disadvantages. Now it is up to us how we manage things so that we can provide better quality of life to the people. Yeah.
Right, sir. Thank you. In your opinion, Mr. Rajkumar Beniwal, what all will be possibly be a better India post-COVID? For many, lockdown has been a blessing in disguise. Can urban experts take the advantage of the lockdown to reconfigure traffic on Indian roads to reduce motor vehicles and open more avenues for non-motorized transport?
So post-COVID, basically, if I talk from the point of view of urban sector or urban areas, I think there are many sectors which are very badly affected, and mostly they are in urban areas. Say if you talk about restaurants, you talk about hotel industry, you talk about even small vendors. During lockdown, they lost their job. They live on daily wages. Basically, they earn daily basis. They spend on daily basis. So whatever challenges they faced, that was the biggest problem for handling the situation in these areas. Now it is now government has to come up with a speedy implementation of certain projects to help these people. Certainly, there is a clear-cut, now trend that the second wave post-COVID things are, becoming smoother on a faster pace. And the unlocking part, that is again a very important thing. How much we have to unlock at what time? Because this pandemic, we don't know the nature of this disease actually, when it can again start increasing, and when it should be, the curves should be imposed, when we have to relax the curves. And at the same time, we have to involve the society also in the entire process, because it is not only the government, it is the people also of the city. that they have to understand to wear the mask, to get vaccinated before they start their own business, even a small or big business. So there are a lot of interaction and lot of policy challenges which we have to adopt to new systems or new ways to we have to adopt, in which if we are predicting a third wave. Suppose if we are predicting when it will come, we never know, we don't know, so we have to be ready for that. So what is the starting point for that wave? When should we start imposing restrictions, and at what level? Because restrictions, they help in prevention of disease, but at the same time they are not good for the economy, they are not good for the poor people. So that fine balance has to be made, and we don't know when this thing will be over. So we have to live with this for some time. So we have to adjust to this new way of life, and we have to train, and we have to pass on this information to the people also, that they adjust accordingly on a faster pace. Then we can save both people as well as the economy in a better way.
Yeah, true. The dynamics of this crisis has changed in such a way that the definition of governance itself has got dynamic shift.
Correct.
From the times when people used to go to the government, now possibilities vice versa, for the government to go down to the people if we were to effectively manage the COVID crisis, whether we talk of educating the people about COVID appropriate behaviors, or we talk about vaccination, or we talk about other activities wherein we can contain these measures. So you also mentioned about the participatory governance. You mentioned about the involvement of civil society at large. So if I may ask you, Mr. Rajkumar Beniwal, some of the initiatives you are taking under your state and region about involving civil society in management of the COVID pandemic.
Yeah, so in fact, I was attending a meeting before coming to join your session. I was attending a meeting with Honorable Chief Minister. We are already in the process of preparation for third wave, actually. And our the main focus in third wave is on two things. So first one is preparation with the logistics, the kind of equipment, resources, manpower that will be required. If we get, say, thrice the number of cases which we got in second wave, so we have to be ready with, so how many oxygen plants, how many ventilators, how many hospital beds, how many nursing staff, and all that. Second is our second focus was how to involve civil society, how to involve people in this entire process, because ultimately we are doing everything for people. If we can educate them well in advance, that say if such thing is going to happen, then these 1, 2, 3, these are the action points which you have to do, you have to take. Because once the pandemic starts, once the number of cases start rising, at that point of time the situation become panicky. To educate people at that point of time becomes very difficult. So our second major focus for the preparation for the third wave is that we have to prepare the people also for this pandemic, to face this pandemic. Now, how to prepare people is most important thing is that what action need to be taken at what point of time, because it is there are two variables. Number one is time, and another is the intensity of the disease. So at what time, what action has to be taken by government, by civil society, by social organizations, by merchants, by shop owners. So there are different sections of society which have to react to this pandemic at different way, and they should know what should be their reaction at what particular time. So that IC activity focus, we are developing SOPs for that, for different category of citizens, that these kind of citizens have to take this kind of actions. So that is another important point on which we are basically focusing right now. So that's what, yeah, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Beniwal. If Mr. Samir Unhale is still there, I would request him to come on camera, please. Mr. Samir Unhale. Sir, one quick question for you once again. How do you see the role of technology in urban management? There is huge potential for technologies like AI, ML, IoT to enhance the resilience of our cities. Your take on this?
Actually, we all are using this technology even right now. I mean, the most easiest IoT device is your mobile phone. And when you log on to either one of the social media platforms or even the traffic platforms, you are using AI. So this IoT and machine learning and AI and robotics and blockchain, these are not very fancy words as such. We have already started using them, probably without even realizing them. So the strength of this technology can be used in much better way, in better coordinated way to handle the issues of Indian cities and towns. I think that is what the focus ideally should be. Even I think most of the state governments as well as even the central government has of course had the smart city mission for the 100 cities. But after that, it has also come up, I think, with the national urban database management system. Then the data maturity models are coming up. So, this issue of using latest technologies in the information and communication sector, I think is happening silently and slowly. And it is giving lots of results, and it is hoped that we are not running behind this technology out of fancy or fad or fashion, but the utility that they will be giving to the common citizens. In fact, many cities in India, even those who are not into the smart cities, are also using extensively the characteristic and the features and the technologies in this domain. In fact, the command control centers were used extensively, are still being used extensively in this COVID management. In fact, many cities have turned the command control centers into the war rooms for COVID. So a lot of data integration is happening. Most of the, in fact, even in national level, if you look at the COVID portal, the Arogya Setu, the COVID-19 portal of the government of India, I think because in India, the numbers are so high that anything you want to do, you will be having lakhs and millions of data sets, and you obviously cannot handle and tackle them by the typical clerical way of calling your reports and preparing even Excel sheets now and Google sheets now, because the size of data is becoming very high. And especially in emergency scenarios like managing of COVID, you require very fast data processing, and you require very fast outcomes and results and predictions. So I think the entire efforts of most of the cities, if not all, the smaller cities may not have that maybe technology, but Indian cities are using these issues of IoT, machine learning, and in fact, most importantly, even if you take the case of very simple case that way of the cleaning of gutters or cleaning of sewers, a lot of people sometimes lose their life due to the methane accumulation that happens in the underground sewerage systems. Now we have startups coming up in a very big way in which robotic cleaning, very simple robotic cleaning of sewers are happening. So I think the Indian cities have been very open and been, in my view, quite fast in adopting all the new technologies that are coming up, and thereby giving better services and better value for money for the Indian citizens. I think so. We will be seeing much greater and faster adoption of technologies. I think one issue is coming up is that most of the municipalities are not having sufficiently trained, dedicated manpower for handling the issues which are coming up. Like maybe 150 years back when engineering was there, we started recruiting civil engineers. When electricity came, we started recruiting electrical engineers also. But somehow this has not happened with the ICT sector, and the own dedicated cadres of computer engineers are not readily available the way they should have been. In fact, Government of India through their NIC has a very strong strong and independent body which is working on the manpower wise, manpower wise. But most of the state governments do have the director of information technology, and in case of municipalities, there is a cell. But I think for the smaller municipalities, I think in this case I can share an experience. I mean, the initiative taken by the Maharashtra government, in which we created a separate cadre for computer engineers for our municipalities. So they are state government employees. A cadre was created for them, and we hope that this specialized cadre and dedicated manpower from the government to the municipal bodies and of the urban local bodies is also a very important, crucial aspect of adoption of this new technology in the municipalities, because we cannot just be dependent upon the consultants and private operators when you're talking of the this technology. We, of course, we require all of them. We require a collective coalition, as I keep on sharing. But I think this is an important aspect, and it will enhance the ability of the municipal bodies and will enhance its capacity, to deal with the challenges. So I think it's a good step happening, and most of the states are also focusing on having good initiatives on this new technology of ICT and its use in Indian cities and towns. Yeah,
nice observation. A nice observation, Mr. Unhale, that terms like AI, ML, blockchain, they are no more fancy terms, but rather they are already there in the municipal administration. But possibly the need is there for scaling up their use. How do we scale up from where we are to next level? My last question for Mr. Beniwal, if he's still around, Mr. Rajkumar Beniwal, being a municipal administrator yourself, what bottlenecks do you see in the creation of clean and green cities, clean and green municipal areas, municipal habitats?
Yeah, so as far as I think, as of now, the biggest challenge which we are facing in clean and green urban areas is the lack of, capacity, lack of capacity of these small urban local bodies. There is no dearth of funds actually, either from central government or from state governments. Every state, not only Gujarat, but every state has, more than sufficient funds to, take up projects in these local bodies. But there are no, as we were just discussing, that computer engineers or basic, civil engineers or maybe electrical engineers, because these urban local bodies are providing all those services which a big corporation is providing. And you see, the big corporation has a staff of 2,000 employees, in which you will have, sewage expert also, you will have electricity expert also, you will have water supply expert also. But these, small local bodies, they have one engineer, one simple engineer who is, roaming around, and his qualification is also maybe just a, diploma in some kind of civil engineering or electrical engineering. One person, how can he handle the, projects worth hundreds of crores? Many municipalities are having projects which are in, hundreds of crores, water supply projects and all that. So that is one important point. Second is planning. So when we decide to take up a project in a particular urban local bodies, though we have a system of, elected representative, but in these small urban areas, holistic plan somehow lacks. Wherever there is a demand, the project is taken up. Public demand or maybe political demand, we take up the project. But if we really want, long-term sustainable projects or quality of life in these urban local bodies, we have to have agencies which can plan for these smaller cities for, longer period of time in a holistic way. If I give you an example, in Gujarat, we are doing from the state level, from commissioner level, we have planned that we will develop water supply system in each, urban local bodies. There are 156 urban local bodies. We will have plans for each urban local bodies, in which we have, ensured safe drinking water supply, which will meet the demand of 2051. So we have calculated, we have the estimate of population in 2051. What will be the demand of water based on that population? What will be the source of water? What kind of distribution system will be required? What is the capacity of water treatment plant? What will be the capacity of main trunk lines? All those plans we are getting, prepared right now for next 30 years. Now these projects, if we take today, then they will serve the, these cities in coming years. But if we start planning for today, for the population which exists today, then it's of no use basically. So this planning cannot be done at that ULB level because they do not have that competence. So that is another challenge which these small local bodies are facing to, for future growth and development.
Mhm.
If a holistic view is taken up, help these smaller urban local bodies.
Thank you, Mr. Rajkumar Beniwal, for putting forth your views. We do hope that this lack of capacity, as cited by you, this problem of lack of capacity is addressed in due course of time, ASAP. I am just now through with the time which was allocated for this panel discussion. So I would request my backend team to present with the speaker certificates. Before that,
Thank you, Beniwalji, and thank you, Rajkumar Beniwalji, for joining us. We are honored to have you. बहुत धन्यवाद आपको कराने के लिए. नमस्कार. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Samir Unale ji. Great speech by you as usual. Thank you so much for joining us. We are honored to have you.
this was Dr. Ravi Gupta, founder and CEO of Elets Technomedia, thanking both the speakers here. So with this, we conclude this session. Thank you both Mr. Beniwal as well as Mr. Unale. We conclude the session, but not the conference. So next panel is coming up.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very much.